It starts earlier than most people remember. Not with a shout, not with a slap, but with a pause. A tiny pause you learn to make before every sentence. You sit there, small legs hanging off a chair that's too big for you, and you look at the faces in the room before you speak. Not to feel connected, but to calculate. Is it safe right now? Did the mood shift? Did someone sigh? Did someone's eyebrow twitch in that way that means you should stay quiet? You take a breath, a soft, shaky one, and you try again. And then it happens. You say something innocent, something true, something a child should be allowed to feel. I'm scared. I didn't like that. I think it happened this way. And the room corrects you. No, you're not. Stop imagining things. That's not what happened. Don't be dramatic. Or worse, the look on their face tells you that your reality, your truth, is an inconvenience. You learn quickly. Your eyes start scanning. Every room, every tone, every shift in someone's breathing. Your mind starts replaying conversations before they even happen. You measure your emotions in teaspoons because a full cup might spill and cause trouble. And slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing, something inside you starts to break. Not your voice, because you still speak. Not your body, because you still grow. What breaks is your inner compass, the instinct that should point you toward truth. Some children are taught not to trust the world. You were taught not to trust yourself. And that's the wound no one ever sees. Because when you are raised to doubt yourself, you don't just question big things. You question everything. Was I really hurt? Was that feeling real? Did I misunderstand? Am I overreacting? Is it me? Is it always me? And here lies the paradox, the cruel truth beneath all of this. The doubt that once protected you, the doubt that kept you safe, the doubt that helped you survive unpredictable rooms and unstable reactions, is the same doubt that now follows you everywhere. Into adulthood, into relationships, into every decision you make. You learn to second-guess yourself to stay safe. And now, even when you are safe, your mind still whispers, "Are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure?" This is where your story begins. When people think of gaslighting, they imagine manipulation in adulthood. But for many, it begins in childhood, quietly, subtly, wrapped in parenting. You say, "I'm scared," and someone replies, "No, you're not." You say, "That hurt me," and they answer, "Stop being sensitive." You say, "I remember it this way," and they insist, "That never happened." That's developmental gaslighting. It doesn't just deny your feelings, it rewrites your reality. Dr. Robin Stern, one of the leading voices on the subject, calls it a slow erosion of the self. And that's exactly what it is. A gradual dissolving of your confidence, your intuition, your sense of truth. It's like someone turned the volume down on your inner voice and turned the world's voice up to maximum. Next, we look at what attachment theorists John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth discovered decades ago. A child doesn't just need food or shelter. A child needs consistency. When caregivers are warm one moment, distant the next, loving today, irritated tomorrow, the child's nervous system learns a dangerous pattern. I must monitor everything to stay safe. This creates what psychologists call anxious attachment, a state where you constantly question yourself because the people around you were unpredictable. So you learn to track tone, micro-expressions, pauses, moods. You learn to adapt before anyone asks you to. You learn to shrink, to adjust, to doubt. because doubt kept you connected, and connection to a child is survival. Neuroscience has a term for what happens next: interoceptive confusion. Interoception is your ability to sense what's happening inside your body, your emotions, your intuition, your needs, even your danger signals. But when every feeling you had was dismissed or denied, your brain learned a tragic lesson. My signals must be wrong. So as an adult, you struggle to tell the difference between intuition and anxiety, between discomfort and danger, between fatigue and laziness, between "I don't want this" and "maybe I'm the problem." It's like growing up with a mirror that shows everyone clearly except you. Finally, we come to the deeper psychological imprint. In Schema therapy, Dr. Jeffrey Young calls it the defectiveness and doubt schema. It forms when a child learns, through repetition, that their inner world is not reliable. So you grow into someone who double-checks everything, asks for reassurance constantly, hesitates before acting, because the default belief becomes, if something goes wrong, it must be my fault. This isn't insecurity. This is conditioning. This is psychology. This is the blueprint of a child who was taught to distrust their own mind. There's a moment, usually in your teens or 20s, when you realize something painful. You don't trust yourself. Not your memory, not your feelings, not your needs, not even your instincts. And that realization doesn't arrive loudly. It shows up in the smallest decisions: choosing a meal, sending a text, saying yes when you meant no. There's a quiet fear underneath everything, a fear of being wrong, a fear of taking up space, a fear of being seen and then corrected, a fear that your very existence needs permission. So you apologize for speaking, for asking, for existing. Sorry, was that too much? Sorry, I might be wrong. Sorry, ignore me. Sorry, forget I said anything. The constant apology loop becomes your native language, and over time, you begin to live life in your head instead of your body. Every decision becomes a debate. Every thought becomes a question. Every emotion becomes a negotiation. You chronically overthink, not because you want to, but because somewhere in your childhood, you learned that the first version of your truth is probably wrong. Your senses lose their clarity. Your intuition becomes muted. Your joy feels suspicious. Your anger feels dangerous. Your needs feel embarrassing. You start editing yourself, softening yourself, shrinking yourself, until the real you becomes a faint outline instead of a person. And this is where philosophy gives us language for what psychology tries to describe. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And for someone raised to doubt themselves, accepting yourself feels almost impossible. Because how do you accept a self you were never allowed to fully develop? Instead of becoming, you performed. Instead of feeling, you analyzed. Instead of trusting, you checked and rechecked and checked again. You became a shapeshifter, adjusting yourself to fit the room, a child learning to survive by disappearing. And eventually, you doubt your memory, you doubt your feelings, you doubt your needs, you doubt your intuition. Eventually, you doubt your existence. Not in the dramatic sense, but in the quiet, aching way of someone who moves through life half present, half real, afraid to be wrong, afraid to be right, afraid to be anything at all. Kierkegaard once said, "The deepest form of despair is to choose to be someone other than yourself, But what happens when you are never given the option to be yourself? What happens when doubt was handed to you before identity ever formed? This is the emotional cost. Not loud, not obvious, but deep. A grief for a self that never got the chance to fully exist. So what happens when a child is raised to doubt themselves? They don't just outgrow it, they carry it, quietly, painfully, into adulthood. And it shows up in ways that seem small on the surface, but they shape your entire life. Let's name them, one by one, so you can finally see the pattern you never chose. You know this feeling, standing in a grocery aisle, staring at 2 brands of the same pasta, and somehow it feels like a test. You hesitate over restaurant orders, texts, emails, life choices, because every decision carries a silent fear. What if I pick wrong? Not wrong logically, wrong emotionally, wrong in the eyes of others. Even the smallest decision feels overwhelming, because you were trained to believe your judgment cannot be trusted. You explain yourself, and then explain the explanation, adding a disclaimer, softening your tone, adding a just-in-case sentence, all because deep down, you feel like you have to justify your existence. You apologize before you speak. You rehearse conversations in your mind. You offer context even when nobody asked for it. This isn't overthinking. This is survival, the oldest strategy you know. You learned early that compliance equals safety, so you became agreeable, accommodating, easy to be around. You say, "It's fine," even when it isn't. You say, "No worries," even when you're hurting. You say, "Whatever works for you," because choosing for yourself still feels dangerous. People call it kindness, but deep down, you know it's more than kindness. It's a contract. I'll keep you happy, so you don't make me doubt myself again. You read tone the way others read text. You scan for micro-expressions, pauses, a change in someone's breath. You're alert to emotional weather, a storm that might not even be coming. You wait for shifts in energy. You prepare for disappointment before it arrives. You anticipate rejection before anyone speaks. It's exhausting, but it's familiar. Because as a child, unpredictability meant danger. So, as an adult, predictability feels like a lie. Something goes wrong? It must be my fault. A friend seems distant? My fault. A partner is quiet? My fault. Someone is irritated for reasons that have nothing to do with you? Still, your brain whispers, check yourself. You probably caused it. This is not insecurity. This is conditioning. You were trained to scan you first, because scanning others never kept you safe. You avoid the spotlight. You minimize your achievements. You share your feelings only after editing them 3 times. Being seen feels like being exposed. Being heard feels like being judged. Being known feels like being vulnerable. So you stay small, even when your soul wants space. You ask others what they think before you ask yourself what you feel. You crowdsource clarity. You outsource your self-worth. You trust strangers on the internet more than your own intuition. Because at some point in childhood, someone convinced you that your perception was defective. Your internal signals were rewired. What feels like danger is often just discomfort. What feels like intuition is often fear. What feels like a bad feeling is often an echo from childhood, not the present moment. It isn't your fault. Your nervous system was shaped by survival. And here's the truth you need to hear. These are not personality flaws. These are not weaknesses. These are not signs that something is wrong with you. These are survival patterns. You didn't grow this way by accident. You adapted. And now comes the unlearning, the slow, gentle process of rebuilding trust with yourself. Psychologists call the first step witnessing. It means acknowledging what happened without minimizing it, without comparing, without saying, others had it worse. Dr. Kristen Neff calls this the beginning of self-compassion, treating yourself the way you'd treat a child who never got the chance to feel safe. Reparenting begins when you whisper to yourself, I hear you. I believe you. Your feelings make sense. And for someone raised to doubt themselves, those words become the first taste of freedom. Healing from a childhood that taught you to doubt yourself doesn't happen in a single moment. It happens slowly, gently, like a sunrise you don't notice until the room is already brighter. And it begins with this, talking to yourself the way someone should have talked to you. This is inner child reparenting. The simple, quiet, radical act of saying, I hear you. I believe you. Your feelings make sense. Speak to yourself the way you needed someone to speak to you, not with judgment, not with dismissal, but with warmth. Because the parts of you that learned to doubt are still inside you, waiting to be heard. Another path is what psychologists call shadow work, bringing the rejected parts of yourself back into the light. The fear, the anger, the needs you buried, the truths you muted. Shadow work isn't about fixing yourself. It's about meeting the parts you abandoned and saying, I won't leave you again. And then there is the body, the place where doubt lives quietly for years. Healing means rebuilding interoceptive trust, learning to listen to your inner signals again, the tightness in your chest, the flutter in your stomach, the heaviness in your shoulders. These were never the enemy. They were messages you were trained to ignore. Listening to them now isn't weakness, it's reconnection. And perhaps the most important part of healing is choosing softness. Softness with yourself, softness with your past, softness with the parts of you that still hesitate. Because strength is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to return to yourself again and again, even when you feel unsure. And here's the truth you may not have heard before. Your inner voice was never broken, it was silenced. You're not learning to create a new one. You're learning to uncover the one that was always yours. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But the moment you begin witnessing your doubt, the moment you begin hearing your own voice again, the moment you say, I choose me, that is the moment fate begins to soften. You were raised to doubt yourself, but you are allowed to believe yourself now. If this spoke to you, share it or subscribe. There are more stories to unwind, more truths to rewoven,